live on Earth, a planet in the solar system, with 7 other planets and lot of smaller fragmentary material called planetesimals or asteroids. It may be just a curious coincidence that solar system is a gigantic system having a central body, a central mass, Sun, which takes about 99% of the entire mass of the solar system, around which the planets are revolving. Similar scenario also exists in the smallest scale of natural system, that is the structure of an atom with the nucleus in the center, having the entire mass of the atom concentrated in the center, and around the center are revolving the electrons of negligible mass. In this session, we will discuss the origin of Earth, how it evolved and what is its relation with the other components of the solar system, namely the Sun and other planets. This diagram is a schematic view of the solar system. All the components of the diagrams, that is the planets and the Sun, are shown in their relative sizes. If we take a close look at the diagram, we see the planets are divided into 2 broad groups. The inner planets made up of Mercury, Venus, Earth and Mars, and the outer planet, that is the giants that are Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus and Neptune. Between these 2 groups of planets, there is a belt of fragmentary material called the asteroid belts. The inner planets are also called terrestrial planets. They are formed by hard rocks and 2 of them lacks almost any gaseous cover. On the contrary, the outer planets, in spite of their very gigantic sizes, are dominated by hydrogen and helium gas with small cores of rocky material. Between these 2 groups of planets, there is the belt of innumerable fragmentary material called asteroids. It is believed that most of the meteorites that come and hit the Earth's surface originate from the asteroid belts. The size of these fragments are restricted because they are having constant collisions among themselves, thereby any larger sizes are fragmented into smaller fragments. Vesta, it is believed, was such a large planetesimal, that is a small planet, which broke down into numerous fragments, and many of the fragments received on Earth in the form of meteorites are believed to be the fragments of Vesta. It is just a coincidence that immediately outward of the asteroid belt there exists the largest planet in the solar system, the Jupiter, with a tremendous pull of gravity. This pull of gravity of Jupiter usually stops the planetesimals in the asteroid belts come and bombard in huge quantities the Earth. Let us take a quick look at the inner planets. None of these inner planets except Earth and Venus has any sizable atmosphere of any density. Mercury has no atmosphere. Venus has atmosphere made up of carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide, and it is very dense, creating a very high pressure on the surface of Venus, and presence of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere because of the greenhouse effect raises the temperature on the Venus to such a high degree that the high pressure caused by the thickness of the atmosphere and the high temperature makes the surface of Venus uninhabitable by life forms. Earth, as we have discussed during our session on origin of biosphere, is very unique in the sense that it has atmosphere and it has water to support life. Mars has a very thin atmosphere made up of nitrogen and carbon dioxide. but there is no liquid water on the surface of Mars. However, there are thick ice caps on Mars. From the study of the geological features present on the surface of Mars, it has been now proved that once Mars had flowing bodies of water on it. In Moon, there is no detectable atmosphere and there is no liquid body of water. However, the recent study of Moon by India revealed the existence of ice beneath the Moon's surface. To understand how the Earth has formed, we need to know what was the raw material available for the formation of Earth and how this raw material evolved into the present day Earth. Right from the beginning of scientific observation, man was fascinated by seeing the similarities between the compositions of the meteorite that fall from the sky and that of Earth. This led to a conclusion that there is a commonality in the origin between the meteorites and the Sun. However, to understand the composition of the raw material that has formed the Earth, it is not very prudent to solely depend on the composition of the Earth. It seems rather contradictory that we are trying to understand the material from which the Earth is formed, yet we are not putting as much emphasis on the composition of the present day Earth. The reason is, from the study of the variation of the velocities of earthquake waves through the interior of the Earth and also the comparison of the observable composition of Earth and that of the meteorites, it is proven beyond doubt that the composition of the Earth changes going from the surface to the center of the Earth. Therefore, whatever be the raw material from which the Earth was made, subsequent to its formation, it has undergone some kind of chemical changes, thereby the Earth became a zoned planet with the different zones within the Earth giving different composition. As a result, just by using the easily observable rock types on the surface of the Earth, it will not be correct to assess the composition of the raw material from which the Earth is formed. On the contrary, by the general similarity of the interpreted structure of the Earth and the density variation and variation in the mechanical properties of the Earth, in the light of our knowledge on the meteorites, we believe that the meteorites and the Earth possibly has a similar starting material from which later the Earth evolved, and maybe many of the material did not evolve at all. However, there are meteorites which are evolved, they are called differentiated meteorites, and by matching the structure of the Earth with the help of the earthquake waves with the structure of the meteorites, it is firmly established that the Earth has a layered structure whose composition changes from the surface to the center. Spectral analytical study of Sun's photosphere, that is the bright envelope around the Sun, revealed that the abundance of the elements, that is the composition of the photosphere, are very similar to the compositions of the carbonaceous chondrites. And we also note a similarity in composition between the Ci chondrites, that is a type of carbonaceous chondrite, and that of the Earth. Therefore, it is now accepted that Earth, the meteorites and the Sun has a common origin. And by observing with the help of advanced technology, especially the gadgets like Hubble telescope put in space, we believe that Earth evolved along with the other members of the solar system from a cloud of dust. These cloud of dusts are called nebula. In the following diagrams, we will trace the evolution of the solar system starting from the cloud of dust, that is the nebula. In the first stage of the formation of the earth, we see the development of EGGs, that is evaporating gaseous globules. Pictures taken by the Hubble telescope of the Eagle Nebula clearly shown finger-like projections. On the top of that there are globules whose diameters are comparable to the solar system. Let us take a closer look at one such picture and then draw schematic diagrams to trace, as we understand till today, the evolution of Earth. Planetary formation is linked with the formation of stars themselves, and for our Earth it is the Sun, the nearest star. Stars are now widely considered to form from clouds of gas, mostly hydrogen and helium. Such clouds also contain some amount of ices and dust composed of elements with heavier atomic weight than helium. Recently, the space-based Hubble telescope took the photograph of Eagle Nebula. There it clearly shows the existence of EGGs. These concentrations of evaporating gaseous globules, large increase in density leads to collapsing to form a star. The next stage of formation of the solar system is the condensation of the gases in the solar nebula. The EGGs are slowly rotating globular masses of dust. The first phase of the formation of the solar system involved gravitational collapse of the interstellar cloud with hydrogen and helium, and also very small quantities of metallic and silical dust and ices. The elements are silicon, aluminum, iron, calcium, oxygen, carbon and nitrogen. These are comparable to the composition of the present day Earth. The ices include that of water, carbon dioxide, methane and ammonia. Some external influence such as shock wave travelling from a catastrophic explosion may have triggered the collapse. Because of the gravitational attraction, the mass started to concentrate more near the center of this nebula, and the nebula starts to rotate faster. Finally, the gravitational pull to the center become equal to the outward force due to rotation. By this time, the globule has taken the form of a disk, and the main mass is concentrated in the center, which is the prototion, to evolve into the Sun that we see today. During the collapse, the material moved from the outer side of the nebula to the center. So, it has to do some work. By this work, heat is generated and started to heat up the central part, which is to form the Sun. This marked the end of gravitational collapse and started the heating process of the proto-sun. After the end of the gravitational collapse, the central part of the nebula started to become hot by nuclear fusion. The process of fusion of two hydrogen atoms into one helium, and during this transformation some part of the mass is converted into energy, as is done in hydrogen bomb. This fusion gave the Sun its energy, and the nebula disk started to get hot again. Then starts the accretionary process that ultimately led to the formation of the separate planets. We go back to the picture. Condensed particles of dust and ice collided with each other and tended to stick together. These random collisions increased the particle size to about 10 millimeters over a period estimated to have been about 10,000 years. In the inner orbits, these clumps of dust would have been dominated by silicates and metals. Their composition is preserved in the most primitive meteorites. After the formation of these small clots of dust, these clots accreted to form the planetesimals by mutual collisions. Particle collisions continued, increasing the size of clumps, and decreasing the number of objects in orbit around the newly formed Sun, eventually producing numerous bodies ranging in size from 0.1 kilometer to 10 kilometers in diameter. These newly formed bodies are called planetesimals, that is, tiny planets. So far, we have reached from dust to clots of dust and finally into planetesimals. It is believed many members of the asteroid belts represents these planetesimals, which either fail to grow into larger planets or even after their growth fragmented into smaller pieces because of mutual collisions. The formation of planetesimals led to the formation of planetary embryos by collision. By this time, the planetesimals had grown into sufficient size so that their collisions have led to enough heat and thereby fusing planetesimals into larger bodies. The larger bodies would begin to heat up because of the release of kinetic energy as smaller bodies impacted. Above the size of 10 kilometers, this focusing of accretion on the larger planetesimals would have led to the relatively rapid growth of larger objects known as planetary embryos. Such embryos can be up to a few thousand kilometers in diameter. This is estimated that these large planetary embryos, by the action of their gravity, pull the planetesimals to themselves and thereby grow in size. The next stage of growth is the growth of these planetary embryos and giant collisions, as is shown in the diagrams. This would have been slower, involving fewer chance collisions between planetary embryos. The fewer collisions will be much larger in size than for the smaller collisions among the smaller planetesimals, and such smaller collisions would have been numerous. So, with the growth of the planetesimals into planetary embryos, the number of such collisions diminished, but the size of the collisions started to grow bigger and bigger. Such giant impacts probably fragmented both of the impacting bodies, with the debris subsequently recombining to form a new larger body. The heat released was so probably capable of melting the newly combined mass, creating a molten material known as a magma ocean. In a different session, we will discuss about the magma ocean and its importance in the formation of core. Metallic material sank through the magma ocean and formed a dense metallic core, thus producing a differentiated planetary embryo. Now we come to the differentiation of planetary embryos and the assembly of a planet. Giant impacts would have continued to occur on an ever increasing scale between these partially differentiated planetary bodies, and it is estimated that it would have taken about 10 million years for the terrestrial planets to reach half their current mass and about 100 million years to complete their growth and build an Earth-sized planet. The planet forming process is now nearing a completion. Let us see what happens after this in the following diagrams. Once the last giant impact had occurred, and for the Earth the impactor was of the size of planet Mars, resulting in the formation of the Moon, there were just 5 surviving planetary bodies. Those forms the inner planets: Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, and the Moon, the satellite of the Earth. Of course, accretion continues to the present day in the form of meteorite impacts, but fortunately most of these are too small as to be noticeable. But even so, the estimated accretion rate to the Earth today, including the dust particles, is about 10 million kilograms per year. It is rather interesting to note that Earth is still accreting and receiving huge amount of material from the outer space, but the size of this material, ranging from small dusts to meteorites usually measured in meter size or even less, is not disturbing the equilibrium that the earth is enjoying now. So, accretionary process continues. The rate of accretion was much higher than at present, but earth is possibly still gaining mass because of this accretionary process. Let us now try to visualize the moon forming process, and we see how the moon came out of earth after the collision between earth and a meteorite of the size of planet Mars. Here is a schematic diagram showing the different stages of moon formation from this collision. In case of the earth, this last giant impact was so violent that a portion of earth and also that of the impactor were fragmented and got separated from the two bodies. We can see these fragments in this diagram, and we also see how these fragments started to rotate around earth because of its gravitational attraction. During the process of rotation, they have mutual collisions as like the planetesimals in case of earth, and thereby they grew to the present size of moon. The impact that created moon from the earth was so great that the axis of rotation of earth, which was initially perpendicular to the plane of revolution of earth around the sun, became tilted by an angle of 23.5 degrees. Moreover, the heat of this collision was so strong that a portion of the earth of at least 1000 kilometer depth and extending all over the planet got molten. This is a very important event in earth history, that is the formation of the moon, because it not only gave us our only satellite, but it has formed a magma ocean from which